The phone buzzes at 2 a.m., 41 notifications. Congratulations pouring in from numbers you haven't dialed in years. A cousin you spoke to once, at a funeral. A college roommate who ghosted you after a bad loan. You stare at the screen in the dark, and instead of joy, you feel something closer to dread. Because you already know what's coming. Not gifts, not celebration, requests. Here's the number that should scare you. Researchers have found that a large share of people who come into sudden wealth lose their closest friendship within the first 12 months. Not their money, their people. Stay with this video, and you'll learn exactly why that happens, and the one habit self-made millionaires use to make sure it never happens to them. This is the moment nobody shows you in the movies. The instant your net worth crosses into seven figures, and your relationships quietly start to fracture. Not because the people around you are villains, because money changes the physics of trust itself, and almost no one sees it happen until it's already done. Here's the story we're told about wealth. Work hard, save relentlessly, hit the number, and life opens up. Freedom, security, deeper connection with the people who matter, because now you can finally help them. But talk to people who've actually crossed that threshold. Genuinely crossed it, not just online. You'll hear a different story, a quieter one. Old friendships going cold, family dinners turning tense, a creeping suspicion that colors every new relationship they form afterward. Something happens to the architecture of trust once real money enters a room. And the strangest part, financial researchers have been documenting this for over a decade. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what's happening beneath the surface, and the one thing self-made millionaires do differently to stop it from happening to them. Start with what actually shifts first, not your bank balance, your instincts. In 2012, researchers at UC Berkeley ran a series of studies on how social class affects behavior. Their findings were uncomfortable. As people's sense of relative wealth increased, so did entitlement. Empathy and decision-making went down. Not because wealthy people are inherently worse, because wealth changes how dependent you feel on others. And empathy is partly built on mutual need. Think about that for a second. For most of your life, you needed people. A boss to keep paying you, a partner to split the bills, a friend to lend you gas money before payday. Interdependence is quietly the glue of every relationship you've ever had. The moment financial need disappears, some of that glue disappears with it. You don't notice it happening. That's what makes it dangerous. You still call your old friends. You still show up to the barbecue, but something behind your eyes has shifted. A new instinct to calculate, to filter, to wonder what someone actually wants from you before they've said a word. This is where the second wound begins, and it's the one nobody warns you about. Because it isn't just your empathy that shifts. It's your radar for authenticity. Financial therapists have a term for the disorientation that follows sudden wealth. Sudden wealth syndrome. First described by psychologists working with lottery winners and tech founders in the late 1990s. The core symptom isn't extravagance. It's paranoia. A persistent, low-grade fear that every relationship in your life might secretly be transactional. Look at Jack Whitaker. In 2002, he won what was then the largest single-ticket jackpot in U.S. history, over $300 million. Within a few years, he was fielding lawsuits from strangers, a granddaughter's tragic decline linked to the sudden influx of cash around her, and a slow unraveling of the family he'd wanted to protect in the first place. Whitaker himself said publicly that he wished he'd torn up the ticket, not because the money ran out, because of what it did to the people closest to him, faster than he could brace for it. Picture it. Your brother calls to catch up, and halfway through the conversation a thought creeps in, uninvited. Is he building up to asking for something? Your childhood best friend invites you to lunch, and you find yourself studying his tone, searching for the pitch behind the smile. You hate that you're doing it. You do it anyway. And here's the cruel mechanism at the center of all this. This suspicion doesn't just protect you. It changes how you treat people. You get colder before they've done anything wrong. You pull back preemptively. People feel that shift, even when they can't name it. Relationships that might have stayed genuine start decaying. Not because anyone betrayed anyone, because distrust became a self-fulfilling prophecy. You didn't lose your relationships to greedy people. You lost them to your own defense mechanism. Now here's where it gets sharper. Because this doesn't stay contained to one friendship. It spreads to the ones with the deepest history. Families run on an unspoken ledger of equality. Similar houses, similar struggles, similar milestones reached around the same time. The moment one sibling's net worth outpaces the other's by a wide margin, that ledger breaks. Old jokes land differently. Financial counselors who work with high net worth families describe the same recurring scene. A parent quietly asking their newly wealthy child for help, followed by months of tension neither side wants to name. Give the money, and resentment follows, because the relationship now has a debt attached to it. Withhold it, and the silence afterward is louder than any argument could have been. So if it's really about shifting trust, and not the money itself, here's the question worth sitting with. Does more money actually make any of this worse? Or does it simply reveal cracks that were always waiting underneath? Economists have tested a version of this question, and the answer complicates the story even further. In 2010, Princeton researchers Kahneman and Deaton found that day-to-day happiness rose with income, but only up to a point. Then it plateaued. That's the origin of the idea that happiness has a ceiling. But in 2021, Wharton researcher Matthew Killingsworth challenged that plateau using real-time mood tracking instead of memory-based surveys. For most people, well-being kept climbing well beyond that earlier threshold. The exception, a smaller group of already unhappy individuals. For them, more money made almost no difference at all. Sit with that contradiction, because it's the real heart of this story. Money doesn't reliably fix unhappiness. It amplifies whatever emotional foundation was already there. Built on trust, wealth strengthens it. Built on something fragile beneath the surface, wealth exposes it, fast, and often permanently, which means the millionaire burden was never about the $1 million. It was about what the money finally had the power to reveal. And here's the part that should actually give you hope, because not everyone loses this fight. This is why some of the wealthiest people statistically never look wealthy at all. Author Thomas J. Stanley spent years researching self-made millionaires. In his landmark study, The Millionaire Next Door, most of them didn't live in mansions, didn't drive luxury cars. They lived modestly, often indistinguishably from their neighbors. Not just to save money, to protect relationships from a single, corrosive question. Does this person like me or my money? By staying quiet about their wealth, many of them sidestep the exact trap we've been tracing this whole time. No sudden shift in how family treated them. No flood of new friends. Their money grew. Their relationships, for the most part, didn't have to pay the price. Which brings us back to that phone, buzzing at 2 a.m. Because here's what most people get wrong about that moment. It isn't proof that wealth destroys relationships. It's a mirror, held up sooner than expected, showing you relationships exactly as they already were. Just before you had enough power, or enough money, to see it clearly. Some of those 41 messages were genuine. A few probably weren't. The cousin from the funeral. The roommate who ghosted you. Maybe one of them surprises you. But the version of you, reading them in the dark, feeling that instant flicker of suspicion, that response didn't come from nowhere. It came from somewhere honest. Somewhere the money simply had the power to finally illuminate. Wealth doesn't hand you a new set of problems. It hands you a floodlight and points it directly at the ones you were always carrying, quietly, patiently, waiting for enough light to be seen. Maybe that's the real price of the first million. Not the relationships it costs you, but the truth about them it finally forces you to face. If this changed how you think about money and trust, it's worth asking yourself now, before the number gets big. Which of your relationships are built on need, and which are built on nothing at all? But surviving that floodlight is only half the story. The harder question is what comes after. How the wealthy who do keep their people actually go about rebuilding trust from scratch, once the damage is already done. That's a different story, one worth telling properly. If you want to be here when it airs, subscribe now, because this is the one most people never get to see.